I realized I've been doing this entire thing without the audio turned on because I'm an idiot. Alright. Okay. I might go through and re-narrate that, I might not. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. So, I did some stuff, and we're gonna hope that I maybe just pick this up again anyway. So let's go in, and we're just gonna use a crappy Chrome preset for this. Material did I just make this? Because that is not, whoops. Alright, I'm going to delete unused nodes here, and standard do, AI standard surface, much better. We're going to grab the Chrome preset, because I do like a good Chrome preset. I'm going to give this a little bit of roughness. And we're going to come in, and this is something that I actually want to do on the Damascus texture, so I'm going to just clear this nonsense and do make another mix shader, and I'm gonna say that this is going to be my Chrome texture and my Damascus. I have no idea if this is gonna make sense in the slightest, but we're gonna find out, I guess, in a minute. Oh, wait, this is my standard surface. What is this? Get rid of that. Oh, whoops, that's the default Maya one. Can't get rid of that, never mind. Alright, so we have mix shader 3. What is this? Okay, so we're gonna do mix, Damascus, scratch, rate, and the AI standard surface, which is our Chrome. Alright, so, alright, grab that again, put the Chrome in instead of the wrong shader. And for the mix here, I'm gonna use a curvature. I'm going to use a curvature node and just grab, again, any of the RGB values for this, just dump that haphazardly into the mix. And then in my mix dagger, I'm going to grab this, and instead of this Damascus, I'm going to grab my mix Damascus and just swap that in. I don't imagine that's going to do anything terribly nice for the time being, but let's go ahead and see if we use isolate select. I'm not gonna lie, I like this whole thing being Damascus. It looks insane. Okay, so we have our mixed Damascus. What am I doing? Grab this, expand this. Ah, yes. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the AI curvature, see what the heck that's doing. The answer in this case is apparently not a huge amount. Alright, so I'm just gonna kind of mess with this until I'm basically just trying to like highlight the edges of this dagger, specifically focusing on like the bladey part. And you can see that now we have a little bit of chrome sort of cutting into the edge of that. If I wanted to target this specifically, I would have to go through with a texture file or break off the UVs further. Strictly speaking, my the UV setup or the geometry of this would allow me to easily split that off. I just don't really want to. Otherwise, like I said, texture files, totally viable way to go for that. Alright, so we have our chrome, and I'm just for grinsies, I'm gonna say that this is maybe not like a chrome, but maybe this is, that's anything but that. Maybe this is some kind of interesting, like, off chrome, where it's like a little bit of like a weird metal color. If I wanted to make this very unrealistic, I could make the specular highlight some other, flavor of blue, basically. But I think that's a little bit interesting, like when the light hits it, it kind of does something kind of weird. Actually, I feel like also maybe some kind of like green. Ooh, I like the green. Alright, we're gonna stick with the green for that. So like I said, not going so much for realism in this particular area, just kind of like funsy beans. Okay, so let's go add some grime to this handle. So what I'm gonna do is basically, I want the grime over everything. So I'm going to add my mix, my final like dagger mix with grime over top of that. So before we do that, I do actually need a grime texture. So let's go ahead and grumble. Okay, go ahead and actually make said grime texture, which is just going to be a very generic brown with lots of roughness, and I'll make that darker so hopefully it actually shows up on the stupid handle. Alright, so we're going to do mix shader. Let's mix grime. Alright, and into this we're going to plop the dagger 1 and the grime. And there's a few different ways to handle this. I'm going to show you kind of the maybe less than ideal way to do this. There's a reason that I set up my textures the way that I did. We'll see if it actually works, but I have a theory here. Alright, so let's grab all of this and assign our mix grime. Yay. Yay. Cool. Alright, and I have absolutely, clearly I missed an object there, absolutely no idea what this is doing, so it would probably help if I actually piped that into the mix node. Yay. Alright, what is actually happening here? There we go. Weird. Just needed to refresh. Alright, so we have, let's just say that this is our grime. You know, doing its lovely grimy thing. It does get a little bit darker, so that is kind of nice. Very aggressive over there. So let's see. I wonder if I'm going to set something like really high for the radius. Like, can I manually input like 10 into this? Apparently I can. Aha. Alright, so let's actually try that. I am curious to see what that does, just like putting in my own weird values in here. I'm trying to get a little bit of like a softer sort of effect in this. But again, mostly just sort of playing with random settings and seeing what it gets me. Alright, so I'm actually pretty sure that setting the radius up to something obnoxiously high is not necessarily what I want for this. Just for fun, let's see what happens if I set the spread to 5, you know. Super amazing. Alright, cool. So, that's fun. So now we have our grime, you know, it's grime, yay. I'm gonna go through and there's a few things, I guess, to sort of be aware of. So if you're doing the curvature node and you tick self only, that's only going to look at specific objects in terms of the curvature. So if we look at that, that's going to be basically like this object, this object, this object. So it's gonna void, like the handle is a single piece, so you get the grime in there. But this is going to void the grime between these pieces and that kind of stuff. So just like a thing to be aware of with the curvature node. I think, and I could be sort of wrong, I believe these two are sort of tied together. But like without inputting something in here, the inclusive doesn't really seem to make an actual change between these pieces. So I'm actually kind of surprised that it is registering dirt here. I don't have to use an ambient occlusion node for that, but I think I still kind of want to anyway. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna break this doodle off. Actually, I'm just gonna make the ambient occlusion node and just pop that in. Alright, so I'm gonna throw this in my mix shader, see what this gets me in terms of my shading. Let's just like look at this for a second. So this is another one where you have the option to tick self only, or compared to like other objects. So in this case, I kind of want some of the features where it's like I want these pieces to interact with each other and like have the grime with each other, like between the separate pieces of the dagger, but also if this is on a ground plane, it's going to pick up ambient occlusion from that, which I don't want. So the reason that I did the texturing the way that I did the texturing is so that I could actually go through and mesh combine these objects in a way that would allow me to theoretically tick self only, but basically we're not going to have the floor and stuff influencing it, but since these are technically registered as a single object, you do get that ambient occlusion on just the dagger itself, but you'll notice like that gross shading on the ball went away. So that's why I set up the textures the way I did, and it's really horrible practice to assign multiple like faces within a mesh a single color. It's especially difficult with procedural texturing, so that's why I set it up to have it sort of broken down into like one weird giant texture file of hell. Alright, so anywho, we have this, and it looks, you know, textury. Clearly my stuff is backwards here, so since I am going to actually use the ambient occlusion, I'm just going to swap these the textures here. Whoops. Clearly I have swapped those the wrong way. Alright, so now we have at least grime in the crevices, and then I pretty much always hate the way that ambient occlusions look without some kind of ramp shader plopped in there. So let's go ahead and plop that into the middle of our shader. Oh god, my wrist is like really like being weird. I'm having issues clicking. Alright, so let's go and look at our stuff, and like let's just say that like the areas that are gonna be black are gonna be like much blacker, and now we're actually getting a little bit more illusion sort of like running out to the rest of the dagger, which is kind of what I wanted for this. Alright, so we have something like this, which is a little bit sort of nicer, I guess, and dirtier looking. Yay to this. But maybe I want to break this up a little bit. I'm going to use a noise texture to do that. Before I do that, though, I'm going to figure out... I'm going to reorganize my mixed grime and just like map that out again, so I'm not messing with 8,000 things everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to grab sort of my last ramp shader, and I'm going to add a noise texture in here. So the textures, as soon as you add a texture file like this, it is obviously dependent on UVs, but I was using texture files anyway, so my UVs are like decent-ish. And then I'm going to grab an AI multiply node, and I'm going to grab my, you know what, I know I pretty much always also pipe these into ramps, so I'm just going to go ahead and make the ramp to start with. So I'm going to grab this ramp, and grab the out color and put it into input 1. This ramp is going to be input 2, and then I'm going to throw in my noise texture into this ramp, so that we have a giant hellish mess of ramps. And I should also probably swap the actual mix node into that. Okay, so here is our noise texture for the ramp, and I'm just gonna say that like maybe like just sort of something like that, where it's like theoretically cutting out some of the areas within this, sort of cutting out some of the areas within the ramp. And actually, it occurs to me that I actually don't need the multiply node for this. I can cut that out entirely because this ramp has some basically white values, which is where I'm trying to show. Wait, go back to here. So the ramp has, like I said, these little like black values, which is where I'm trying to like add stuff in. So what I can actually do is a really weird thing, where you sub in the ramp and just drop it into selected color, and then anywhere that there is basically black, it's going to be substituted to that noise texture instead of just pure black. So that's actually a significantly easier way to do stuff. It eliminates the entire need for the multiply node, and then seems in this case to work a little better, cough cough. You can smush that back in, and then you should have a little bit splotchier grime on your dagger. And in this case, I think I might up the frequency to something maybe like 15, just to get like maybe a little bit more sort of something in there. By something, I mean maybe a little bit more variation in the heat. Super helpful. I'm going to try refreshing my... Actually, I'm going to get rid of this multiply node because I'm not using it. Self-sane. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so let me really quickly just open up my render view again and see if this is giving me anything better for this preview. Okay, apparently not. So I think this is the thing where I actually haven't run into it in a while. I thought they fixed it, but apparently not. Where it seems like at some point, if you're doing a bunch of like noises into ramps directly into other ramps, it doesn't do the isolate select stuff well, which is a little frustrating, but you know, whatever. But yeah, so I'm just gonna say something like that is maybe like kind of decent. I might up the black values a little bit just to get a little bit more sort of grime in there. So anyway, we have some grime. It's grimy. Yay. I don't think I'm going to put dust on this because I don't think that would make a huge amount of sense, honestly. But what I can do is maybe get a little bit of variation within of like scuff marks in the leather or something. So let's try to like break that up maybe a little bit. It's certainly not a super awesome example of procedural texturing, but anywho. Alright, so where am I going? Let's grab my leather, and let's do another AI standard surface with all this leather scuff. And this theoretically would probably be better to have some kind of like actual file texture in here, but for now, I'm just going to pick a slightly slightly lighter, grayer, rough material. And I'm going to make another mix shader, so it's the same thing I did with the Damascus. I'm going to say mix leather, into which I'm going to put my leather scuff and my regular leather. And then for the mix weight of this, I'm going to use a curvature node. Curvature node, curvature node. All right, and I'm going to throw the value of that curvature node into this. And then I believe the mix dagger hilt is the one that I need to sub this leather into. And when I do that, theoretically, we should have some sort of something or another for this. I'm going to reopen the render view. For some reason, refreshing it doesn't seem to really work for me, which is kind of frustrating. All right, so we have convex. Let's see if we can mush that a little bit to get maybe some values that are sort of closer to what we want. So this is probably like extremely excessive scuffing. Maybe something like that. It's not amazing, but you know, it'll give us, hopefully help sort of break up a little bit of that leather scuff slightly. Let's also really quick make this green just so we can see. Okay, great. So that is actually doing something. Like sometimes it ends up just being hard to see, so I make stuff weird colors for a second. All right, so that's like kind of interesting actually. Where it gives, it's certainly not natural looking, but it's interesting in the sense that it does sort of break up that handle a little bit. I think I'm also going to slap another noise texture in here. And this is another one where we do actually want to end up using a multiply node for these guys. Alternately, I mean, we could just pipe this into a ramp shader, but that seems excessive. So this one, I am just going to grab a random noise. I'm not going to do anything nice with it with ramps, just going to sort of throw it in casually. And you can see that that is going through and it is helping to sort of break up that texture. So we have this noise in here, and if we were to make this whole thing slightly darker, that's going to get rid of and sort of like pull back some of that curvature node, so we get a little bit less aggressive wear and tear on that. We could also, if we wanted to mess with the frequency a little bit, so maybe we're not getting so, like a little bit, what was I saying? It's not so uniform the way it's picking stuff off, but anywho, that's just like a random example of procedural texturing. I'm not really going to go through and do a whole lot with this because it looks really goofy, but hopefully that was maybe helpful to someone, possibly.